We are live.
Senate appropriations, April 10th. We're going through H951, FY27 budget as passed by the House. Their trustee, friend and staff at JFO, Mr. Gideonson.
Thank you, Grady Nixon, Director Fiscal. So we left off on section E301, which should be on the bottom of page 52 of the document you all have. That was quite a cliffhanger. We just got into human services.
Yeah.
More of them.
So section E301, this is standard language relating to anticipated state fund, state match and federal match relating to various global commitment programs. This relates to the year end. The one thing I flagged for the committee here is there is one reference to the Medicaid reimbursement special fund with the technical letter flagged at the point that this actual expenditure would be made with the year end. The school-based Medicaid reimbursement special fund that's being set up in the bill language would already be in existence. So that would just be
Where are you?
this is on page 53 in sub 1.
53, I thought you said E301. Okay.
There's both of those things. E301.
In that sub 1, there was just in the technical letter a correction that the new fund have already been established at year end. So that would be changed from the Medicaid reimbursement special fund to the school-based Medicaid special or reimbursement special fund.
Okay.
E301.1, again relating to global commitment and FY27 closeout. This authorizes the Secretary of Human Services to make transfers among appropriations authorized for Medicaid and Medicaid labor expenses, including global commitment. E301.2 on page 55. This relates to extending global commitment obligations for one further year to bring HCBS plan spending authority forward. So the spending authority I believe was not fully expired, so this extends that to fully utilize those funds. E301.3. This authorizes the Secretary of Human Services to seek an extension of Vermont's global commitment waiver through December 31st, 2032.
They do that just every 5 years?
So the waiver extension, I don't believe is on a hard and fast extension. There, I think we're allowed 2 or 3 extensions before we have to renew the waiver itself, but this would be a request to extend the waiver for 5 years.
That's the same thing in 306, basically.
306 would be, this would be seeking an amendment to the waiver to establish a program for reinsurance.
Original negotiation for the waiver, 10 years.
Yes, believe so.
Okay, close out 306.
306.1 would direct DEVA to terminate any contract for services for the Medicare advocacy program.
Don't know what that is.
This is the ombudsman's office. Or what we used to call the ombudsman's office.
I'm not sure. We'll get back to you on that.
This is not the ratepayer advocate.
No, I don't believe so.
I'm gonna look. We'll ask Senator Lyons.
Yeah, I think it's the ombudsman's office and Michael Fisher.
I think it's specific to legal aid. Legal aid, what legal aid does. I don't know if it's.
The legal aid is money done by official.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know what 33
Yeah,
years.
air, that's not okay.
Right, no.
Right.
Well, we'll leave it on the towing. It's here from the jurisdiction.
E306.2 would be the creation of positions at DEVA through the position pool.
Is this on the position, the chart?
Yes.
Right?
E307, this allows,
And I'll just say, even though we closed that out, we're gonna talk about all the positions later. But we would change, if we change positions.
the language would reflect that.
Yeah.
E307, this allows for payments that are ordinarily made by the Secretary of Education to be made by DEVA relating to Medicaid receipts.
Fine with that.
The following sections that were added by the House relate to the Medicaid School-Based Services Program. So this is a number of statutory changes to that program, the repeal of the current fund that I mentioned before, and then the establishment of the School-Based Medicaid Reimbursement Fund. I think relating to the timing of the movement of these monies, some of these sections are effective on October 1. And this,
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if you shouldn't leave this open.
Yeah. I think all this, we can just leave no comes for. We go back, center alignments.
Are we
That-
talking? This is about all of 307. It's
Yeah.
all related to,
Yeah, all the way to page 76.
okay.
All of it.
on the bottom of page 65 and then continuing on to page 66. This is language directing DEVA to review the implementation of family planning codes in the Medicaid program to ensure that expenditures for family planning services that are eligible for federal match at a 90% rate are receiving that rate. And then it includes language directing DEVA to report back to HROC and the Joint Fiscal Committee on its findings and any estimated savings.
We'll also leave that up until we have center lines full attention from all our other areas.
I've just been working with lead council on some of this language,
Good.
getting it together.
311.
E311 is the repeal of the AHEC sunset.
So they're just, the AHAP program was gonna be, would sunset next year.
Correct.
And we're saying it's not sunset.
Correct.
I assume everybody supports that.
Seems good.
Both gone out.
Section E312
Got it.
is language relating to the allocation of funds for AIDS services and substance misuse, or sorry, harm reduction services. So the House added $45,000 in sub 2 on page 67, reflecting that the budget adjustment added $45,000 to this as well. And there's language directing that grants cannot be lower from the prior fiscal year.
Are you saying $340,000 is 40,000 more, or they added?
It's $45,000 more than it was in the GovRec.
It should be read.
It should be read. And in the GovRec, this section was 2 separate sections because the 2 respective grant programs are operated by different parts of the department. The GovRec separated it out, and in the numbers sections of the bill, the money is separated out. But the House consolidated the sections back together as it has been for many years in the past.
And, the advocates like the way the House did this. They might next week have some additions, but they're good with this.
This builds on what we did in the PA.
Correct. It's reflective of that change in sub 2 that was in the VAA, but adding it from 295,000 to 340,000.
But do you want to have it closed out?
No, I think the language they put in, apparently is fine.
Okay. We will close it out, but there's nothing preventing the opening thing before this.
But, well,
Totally.
there might be an addition.
Yeah.
On page 69, section E 313 directs the Department of Health to review previous appropriations from the opioid abatement special fund and make recommendations to the opioid settlement advisory committee and relevant standing committees regarding what appropriations that were funded by that fund could in future years be funded through the substance misuse prevention fund.
So, I want to keep that open.
Okay.
Section E 316 directs DCF to conduct a report. I'm apologizing for forgetting the bill name, the act number rather. This report was directed in an act about 5 years ago. This would just be another report on the rateable reduction for reach out.
I want to keep that one open as well. I'm talking with folks.
Okay.
Section E 317 relates to funding for supervised visitation programs. So it calls out specific allocations of appropriations made both in the base and the one-time section and directs DCF to distribute those funds to community-based supervised visitation sites, provide some funds for startup funding where additional sites and counties where programs do not currently exist, and 50,000 to the Vermont Network for statewide supervised visitation coordinator.
Do you have an opinion on this in your mind? Yeah,
I think. that was-
where is this? This is federal money?
This is state funds, general funds, and $100,000 of federal funds.
This doesn't have the 130,000 housing. Yeah, it does. I might want to look at that.
We'll leave that.
E 322 is the amendment to statute, limiting those eligible for the nominal annual home heating fuel assistance benefit to those households with a member that is elderly or disabled under staff regulations. The Amy was able to look into the $21 nominal benefit here, and it seems that the point of that benefit is not actually to provide $21 of fuel assistance, but to extend eligibility for staff. And then this, due to federal changes, further guidelines on which households are actually eligible for it, meaning the statute needs to be updated to reflect that.
Is it to extend benefits to 3 squares or SNAP, or is it to extend benefits for home heating fuels for both?
I believe making households eligible for the home heating fuel benefit allowed them to,
Also be eligible.
yes,
Kind of an easier way to be eligible.
I
Administrative.
That's my understanding, that the point of the nominal benefit was to increase access to staff benefits, and due to federal changes, this nominal benefit has to have further guidelines around it to limit it to those households that have either elderly or disabled individuals.
And could they could get a benefit over $20, but that's saying they're eligible for that benefit.
Yes, so this speaks particularly just to this nominal benefit that's provided to expand staff access. And that nominal benefit being provided now would only assist those with an elderly or disabled individual.
If I may, about this section, what you're describing sounds logical and good. It also feels like it doesn't, if that's what this does, it does not seem very clear. And so for whatever it's worth, it seems like it might be, I mean, I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but if we had the time, I would want to rewrite the section to just make it clearer that that's what it's doing.
Maybe we need to hear from, oh, did you talk to OEO?
We got I think the committee may have also got, I was trying to pull it up and I can't, find it right now. So I think that, this is what the administration requested, so it may be that you're not seeing the entire
Yeah,
legislation, statute.
right.
But we could
Okay.
get more information together and just talk about it next week.
That would be, I'm also happy to have some offline conversations, just to do that research or dig into it. Because, for somebody who's not seeing the remainder of the statute, it's not apparent, that that's what's happening here.
Yeah, leave it open and we can try to.
And
Maybe they sent us an email, maybe that explains it better, but we got, so you can talk
Okay.
to OEO.
Okay.
Because OEO does both snakes and the full meetings.
Right, there are the benefits.
right, like if there's some other reference to the $21, or if there might be some more supporting language that would make it clearer.
Okay. 325.
That's part of 938, the House of the Homeless.
325 is.
Yeah.
Do you want to leave that open?
Yeah. Because we're working on the bill. Let's see.
Section E 326 specifies that 750,000 of the appropriation in B 326 be for the replacement and repair of home heating equipment.
Mhm.
And this is DCF OEO weatherization assistance program.
Of the money in 326, and this is in 326. So it's of all the money that's appropriated for weatherization. 750 could be used for home heating equipment replacing. They've always had that program. I don't know if 750 is a different number that they've had other years.
I believe it's the same level as it was in Act 7.
I would like to leave that open.
Okay, anyone up to them?
Thank you. I've ideas/questions about that use.
Okay.
Had,
Yeah.
just to name it specifically, like if you were going to replace some equipment with, say, something that was more efficient or lower carbon, is that precluded in this? Because it's just strictly a replacement. Does it have to be like for like?
I don't think so, but it'd be good to check.
Yeah, and if that is envisioned, then I'd like to be clear about that.
Okay.
Next one stays open, where we spent all morning, half of our morning talking about this morning. With the agency and the Vermont Care Partners folks.
Okay.
Section E 329.1 on page 73. This directs Dale to present as separate line items, choices for care program, home and community-based services, and skilled nursing facility services. In the technical letter, it was flagged,
Yeah.
change that language to be appropriation.
Line items changed to appropriate, but otherwise it's fine. So we're closing it out.
With line items out of there.
Yeah.
Line items out, appropriations or any.
Yeah,
Section E 329.2, this is Dale position pool. This is up for one position at Dale, so recommend the committee keep it open and consider it under all of the positions.
Yeah.
Section E 338 is the specification of the supplemental facility payments to Newport and Springfield paid from the pilot fund.
And I assume we just have that language in every year.
Correct.
Can I just ask the supplemental facility payment to Springfield? What is that actually? Go for it. It's just an agreement until that property is rehabbed and something else is done with it.
Are you thinking Windsor? Springfield,
Yeah, Springfield.
there's a prison.
No, that's what I'm talking about, but is it functional, the prison?
Yeah, both in Springfield and Newport, these are part of the agreements when we opened the, both communities negotiated with us.
But am I thinking of?
The Windsor prison was
down.
closed down and be sitting
Yeah.
there.
This is.
They would like a payment.
This is Springfield and Newport, and this goes back to the agreements we made with them when we put together.
Okay, we can close that out.
Section E 500 is House added language, directing the Agency of Education for its FY 27 budget adjustment presentation and its FY 28 budget presentation to include specified and detailed information, including an account of FY 27 appropriations, an account of anticipated carry forward, information on third-party contract agreements and organizational charts, and a written explanation of any changes to the agency's organization, as well as a comprehensive account of any vacancies and information on federal funding changes.
I did ask our education committee to look at this language and see.
I wouldn't use Commissioner Gresham's word spiteful, but there is a kind of intensity to this language.
You would say it was expected to grow in or anything.
But I understand the concern about the organizational chart because it's lived like Swiss cheese for a long time. But this does seem like
I talked to members of the committee and they feel like more information would be helpful, but I asked them to look at this language in particular and see if they have agreements or comments.
Well, one of the distressing things about AOE, and it showed up in DMV this year, is the surveys of employees within AOE has for a number of years now. They've been at the near the bottom saying in satisfaction numbers of employees. I'm not really sure that this exactly gets into that. But I can see why they might ask questions.
oh, I can too. I'm just looking, for instance, at sub 5, top of page 75. Written explanation of any changes to the agency's organization, structure, and personnel. Usually you would have them in and ask them.
I know, I totally agree with that, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that an written explanation of organizational stuff gets at what the low marks in employee satisfaction stuff that personnel does. That I think you should be concerned about.
Yeah, and I would bet that the two are connected in that people are having to carry workloads that should be handled by
Right.
more employees.
So leave that open.
Section E 500.1 explains that the global commitment appropriation in B 501 is for physician claims for determining the medical necessity of IEPs.
So it's not actually about this, but about budget presentation in general. Actually, I'll ask my question later. Never mind.
Okay.
Like from graphs. Very more charts.
What does this do? This says that the global equipment.
It specifies that the appropriation is for physician claims for determining the medical necessity of IEPs, just providing funds to ensure that there's more equitable access for uninsured persons and uninsured persons as well as Medicaid beneficiaries.
Good.
Section E 500.2, this converts positions that were created in Act 73 from limited service to permanent.
Position. Is there other times in the bill where they do anything else with these positions, like change them around or the House does?
This is the only thing that affects Act 73 created positions. It's just the conversion of them from limited to permanent.
Close that language, but well, so is it on the? I assume that those are on, they're not on there.
They are
They
on
are
the list.
They're on.
Position list, yeah.
So-
Yep.
Section E 500.3 amends statute to allow the agency of education to use up to 5% of annually forecasted revenues on administration for the universal after school and summer special fund rather than the set dollar amount of $500,000.
And do we know what percentage of $500,000 was?
I can get back to you on that.
The only thing I remember is that they hadn't used up to 5
Right.
yet, but they were projecting that they might.
And I think it was close to the, like, they had, can't remember now.
Yeah.
If they were thought they'd get to 500, I can't remember if they're asking for this because they think they could go over 5. Yeah, if we could just get what the total, so they're saying of the money that they get for after school, which is all the money from the cannabis sales tax. They will use 5% of that. And you had sent me that at one point,
It was in your bills, 232.
when you talked about doing this bill. How much they did, but I think it was 17 million. Isn't that high?
Oh,
That's the sales thing? No, maybe it's not.
yeah, I
It's
have to
7.
double check.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
The ending fund balance in FY25 was 12.9 million.
This is the annual forecasted revenues. So is the forecasted revenues the same as the appropriation? Or is the forecasted revenues from the forecast of what 5%, what 6% of the annual sales would be? So it's irrelevant of what if we were to change the appropriation, they could use 5% of the forecasted revenues. We need it to be forecasted revenues, not appropriation. You know what I mean?
So this isn't specifically appropriating any money. This is, I can get back to you on that.
We appropriate, I guess we don't, when the 5%, when the sales tax goes to the after school program, is that an appropriation? Or just that, I assume it is, even though it's an automatic. So that's just a transfer.
You have to appropriate
It's-
whatever money.
Even if it's a transfer or
If
appropriating.
you transfer if you're transferring money to a fund and then you're going to appropriate out of that fund.
To expend it. So there is an annual appropriation of the universal after school program. What's the difference between saying we're doing 5% of the appropriation and 5% of the forecasted revenues? Is there a difference? I mean, I think, I'm assuming ever since we've been doing the after school program, we have appropriated all the 6% sales tax over there. So there would, but in the future, if we chose not to, then there would be a difference, is my guess.
Yeah.
But the fund, the fund balance, do you know what the appropriation was? Really?
Yes, so expenses from the fund in FY25 were about $855,000. So if it was 5% of expenditures, that would be far lower than 5% of forecasted revenues.
What are you saying the forecasted revenues are?
I don't know what the forecasted revenues are for FY27. But it ended, the fund balance was 12.9, so on top of that, I would assume.
That could have been 2 years. And they could have like,
I can reach out to Ted Barnett and get you an estimate.
okay, that'd be helpful, you know. But in general, what's supported, I just want to make sure, I understand. How it's being. Okay, 502.
E502, this is language that allows for its annual language relating to special education formula grants, specifying that of the appropriation E502, an amount not to exceed 2 million shall be used by AOE for special education formula grants.
2 million, that's 5 million. Or is that 2, that's what they say.
Section E503, this is annual language that clarifies that the Independence Place program of a new place is considered a 24-hour residential program for the purpose of reimbursement of education costs.
That's the name of the program, Independence Place Program.
The Independence Place program of a new place.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it is.
Section E504, this is annual language specifying that of the appropriation in B504, 4.3 million general fund shall be for a grant to adult ed and literacy providers.
and so language about how that's divided is one more lines.
Yes, so the House added sections that change and update the adult ed formula. So you'll see that.
Later on,
Yes,
coming attraction.
yes.
Okay.
Section E504.1 is the annual language specifying the allocation of flexible pathways funding.
Is the Vermont Virtual High School the same as community high school? Like
I don't-
for incarcerated?
I don't believe so. I think the Vermont Community High School still has the same name.
Okay. And the Vermont Virtual High School?
I think this is the same as the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, which is virtual learning throughout the state.
Yeah. Okay. I never heard it referred to that way, but
This is probably, I would assume this was the name at some point
yeah.
in the past and most likely ought to be updated to reflect the actual name of the program.
And you're saying graded these are the same amounts every year, or the amounts change every year?
The amounts are typically the same. I don't believe they've been updated from Act 27.
Chair,
Yes,
for you, Christopher Joint Fiscal, were you asking for a revenue estimate for the universal after school fund a few minutes ago?
there was.
That's just over $10 million.
That's the annual.
Well, for FY27.
And so that 500,000 would be 5% of that. But if it increases, they have lower numbers. Okay, thank you. So, does anybody have any questions about the flexible pathways? For 21? Try and ask. And then you close it out.
So the following several sections, E504.2 continuing on to E504.5 ending on page 82. These are the House added updates to the adult ed formula. So there are two separate formulas being established here, one that would begin in FY29 and one that would be effective for FY27 and 28. And I would also flag for the committee E504.5 is technical conforming language. If the contingencies in Act 73 is currently enacted are implemented, then this language would conform statute to align with those Act 73 changes, just adding in the word categorical into statute here. And that change would only be effective if those Act 73 contingencies are met.
I think this is fine.
And I know there was negotiations about, like, language.
I just have a question.
Okay,
So for the part that is for effective for FY 29, is it just for 29 or does it go on into the future?
Goes on into the future. Section E507.1 on page 82. This specifies that the appropriation in E507.1 meet for categorical aid to school districts for English learner services.
is there something like this for each category? They must be, like the transportation, yeah, 50%.
I don't believe that all categorical aid would be specifically called out. This was designated as a separate appropriation in recent years, I believe, either in Act 78 or Act 113. And so this language was added then to clarify that the purpose of that appropriation.
Okay, we can close that out.
Sections E514 and 514.1 relate to the specification of the contributions to the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System. And then the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System's portion of the VPIC budget are just flagged for the committee. As is often the case, these numbers are updated just at the end of the process pending committee decision relating to the retirement systems and VPIC.
Okay. We'll find out.
Section E515, this relates to the annual contribution to the retired teachers' health and medical benefits plan, specifying the state contribution and the annual charge contributed by employers.
Okay.
Section E600 relates to this annual language relating to the Commissioner of Finance and Management's warrants of the payment to the University of Vermont. So specifying that this is split up into 12 warrants.
Okay.
Section E602 does the same for the Vermont State Colleges. Section E603 establishes that if global commitment fund monies are unavailable, grant funding for the Vermont State Colleges shall be maintained through the general fund or other state funding sources. And then specifies that the Vermont State Colleges shall utilize the global commitment appropriation in E603 to support dental hygiene, respiratory therapy, and nursing programs.
That dental hygiene is not going very far.
That one might disappear.
Unfortunately.
I don't know why it disappeared.
Section E605 is annual language relating to the allocation of funds appropriated to DSAC. Section E605 on page 86 relates to dual enrollment and early college, specifying the Ed Fund General Fund split to DSAC in section E605.1 for those purposes.
All that money flows through VSEC for early college, or is that just substitution? Depends on.
This is
Well, this is the
This
money
is
for
the
the supply,
stipend.
right, this is just.
This is the stipend.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
Section E606. This was a section where the administration had proposed removing the direction of excess receipts from the state tax to the Vermont Higher Education Endowment Trust Fund. The administration had proposed to remove that from this section of statute and instead direct those excess receipts to the school construction aid fund. This section just retained the technical change. So you'll see that appropriations is struck and transfers is added.
okay,
Section E700 makes various changes to the Land and Facilities Trust Fund. So it specifies that the lands, facilities, and recreational assets owned and managed are managed by the Agency of Natural Resources rather than specifically the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. And then these similar technical adjustments to refer to the secretary rather than the commissioner. And then it allows for expenditures from the fund to also be for administrative costs.
project management, contract development, and administration. And they presented that.
And we talked about also the ski area.
So that's different.
Yeah,
But, there's no cap on the amount of money they could use for
administration.
administration. Because this is of what funds? That they're, just the money in the trust fund, and what money goes into it? Yeah, I know they told us. Or it was like the lease payments, maybe that's how we got into the ski area discussion.
That's when we had Forest Parks and Recreation and talking about their land management and leasing program. It's just, I think this is,
Well, I just wondered if we want to, similar to the after-school program, do we want to limit the amount of money
yeah.
they can use in the trust fund for administration? But it would be, they don't get an annual appropriation, so how would you limit to 5% of the amount of money in the trust fund, or?
So there's, I want to know where it goes, for both forest and parks and fish and wildlife, but particularly forest and parks. The amount of general fund that goes into fund them is pretty small.
Yeah.
Because most of it comes out from, park fees, and all of the way you administer the parks and all the different pieces that come together around that. So, it's not the same as everybody else.
It's got, there's language on page
Right.
89 about the 8% of the moving average after the first 3 years. So that they're increasing the amount 5 to 8% that would be distributed to the fund.
Right, remember when they talked
Yeah.
about
Yeah, and
that?
there's questions about like, did we think that the returns were gonna be that high, but there's other sources that would.
Right, they thought there would be, they would take out 8%.
Right.
And I would specify for the committee too, this is an instance where the statutory cap on the percent of the fund that could be distributed is being raised here, but it still is pending approval from the House and Senate, so still subject to the appropriation authority of the General Assembly.
Right. So they give 8%, they can, if this was a pass, they could take 8% of the trust fund, of that 8%, they could use all of it for administration, the way it's worded, but assuming they would use just a portion for that. So they can't use more than 8% of the funds in any one
For
year.
anything. Right.
With approved. This one.
So this is plans and facilities.
Would be interesting to know everything that goes into the fund.
In sub 4 on page 90,
Yeah,
Oh,
it says on here.
there it is. So we really don't know how much is in there.
Donations, right? They told us how much was in there.
Yeah.
Yes, if you looked at their budget back in we can't coordinate the system. In just the parks area, the special fund appropriation is 18 million and there's 1.7 million in general fund. So I would think that. So
So I pulled up their budget documentation, would you like
Yeah.
me to read it? So in fiscal year 25, the year-end balance was 6.25 million.
Yeah.
And they estimated 5% was going to be 257,000, and then the 8%, which they're recommending, is 437,000.
Nothing about the level of admin costs that they were.
The documentation doesn't specify that.
and they don't say what they're using it for.
It just says they want to use it for project management and administrative costs.
Yeah.
They gave us some examples in area about repairs of some of the buildings.
And this was sort of the only fund they have,
Yeah.
funds versus they have to maintain their buildings.
And provided any even some mowing.
Yeah, let them say that they're used for more, to cover projects on the ground, used for project management.
It is one of those places where a whole lot of this is special on advantages.
It's the thought that we're trying to limit how much can be used on admin.
Do we want to?
That's the only question.
And
and any proposed uses from the fund would be part of the budget presentation, so.
But that's, we wouldn't notice, I think, at least here. If they use a higher percentage. Would be very easy to look by. I'll ask Danny about it. Or Commissioner.
still leaving that open.
Section E 700.1, beginning on the bottom of page 90. There are two sections relating to this amending Act 11 from 2018, the Volkswagen Litigation Trust Fund. And this is, I believe the intent of this language is to expand allowable uses of those funds to ensure that all funds available can be used.
Much money is affected that.
Can't remember, I think the secretary said there was money, but I can't remember if they said how much. Wasn't much.
It's a while ago now.
Yeah, it's 600.
I feel like I'm like reluctantly agreeing. Yes, it's not the ideal, but okay.
Although their argument is, it was the national deal with Volkswagen was about.
Federally, it was so.
Okay, so 700, we're closing out.
700.1 and 700.2.
Yeah.
Then 700.3 is the creation of 2 environmental engineers at A&R through the position pool.
That's part of our,
position sheet.
did we say that, that this section number will change? Is that this?
Yes, so apologies, there's a correction in the technical letter that the internal reference here should be to section B711. And so then the E section number would also be updated to be section B711.
So, 711.3.
Just 711. Section E 923. This is language relating to the retention of interest in the transportation funds. And the gov rec language had it as simply all interest earned on the fund. And through consensus, it was determined that this language should be tweaked a little bit to specify that that interest is solely on the non-dedicated component of the T fund, because there are other funds that receive interest. I think the statutory reference here is to the Transportation Stabilization Reserve. And I would also flag for the committee, the FY27 budget was not proposed or built with this retention of interest, which I believe would be about $1 million in mind. So this section is effective for FY28. It would not affect the current year budget.
So you're saying that 32 BSA 308 is just a reserve?
Right. So there's a specific statutory reference that that reserve retains interest earned on it. So this would be the retention of interest in the transportation fund solely upon the non-dedicated component of the fund.
Which is the only non-dedicated amount of the reserve fund? Or is there something else that's being done?
I can't speak to that. I think that there are a number of funds within the transportation fund that may complicate this. So this was just the most efficient way of specifying its only interest on that component of the fund.
Non-dedicated. What is the non-dedicated component of the fund?
Christopher Ruth.
The major T fund that we think about. The issue is there's some sub accounts within the T fund that can run into deficit because they're reimbursement based. And you don't want a situation where these funds are having to pay interest, like, or be owed interest. So like the cleanest way to deal with this, just make it apply to sort of what we think of as fund code 20105 or something like that. Is the main T fund that we talked about.
The T fund to keep its interest.
Right.
Section E 923.1 makes EVSE charging equipment an allowable use by the Department of Housing and Community Development, just so that that T fund money does not have to run through AOT and then eventually to DHCD, but can be appropriated directly to DHCD for that purpose.
Yep. So no, they didn't do that before.
Beginning at the bottom of this page and continuing for about 20 pages. Just give me one moment. This is the pay act. So the House added the pay act to its bill. There are 10 or 11 sections that relate to this.
Is that not normal?
The pay act is often added to the budget.
Will GovOps look at this?
I don't think they're gonna look at it unless.
And then that brings us to the effective date section at the end of the bill, beginning on page 117, continuing on to page 118. So again, for the committee, multiple of school-based Medicaid reimbursement sections are effective on October 1. The allocation of the retention of the T fund interest would take effect for FY28. And then that section conforming title ed statute to the contingencies in Act 73 would only take effect if Act 73 contingencies themselves are
But
included.
before the transportation fund interest did go to the general. And we were gonna somebody can practically pay act in general, it's gonna be better. This bill has the longest effective date section in the jail.
Last year was pretty long as well.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about all this language?
That's all the language for now.
That's fixed. Fine.
Okay, any questions? Yes, go ahead.
So I'm not suggesting that we make this change right now, but I just want to flag that. So looking at page 97,
Yeah.
where we have the governor's salary. And I would say this literally about any governor. It's not just this governor. It's would be, if this was effective next year, if it was effective 3 years from now, whatever. That amount just feels very out of proportion with everybody else that's in that list. And as I understand it, there is some mechanism for that accelerating over time. And I think that should be re-examined again. Doesn't have to be now, doesn't have to this is not commentary on the individual people. I think the mechanism needs to be re-examined.
And we were gonna ask Farm Human Resources to come in and talk about that a little bit. And although I did find out that these numbers in here don't mean this is the salary they actually get. So the governor, the executive branch has the ability to be within this or even less. So this is kind of based on the formula.
Okay.
So like the governor is not making this dollar amount this year. So like he's chosen to take less.
Oh, so he's opted to, so this is like a ceiling.
Yeah. Well, it's not a ceiling.
Floor and a ceiling.
That's right.
It's a floor, but they have the ability to go below the floor. Like there are some governors out there that just take $0. So the governor could, remember like Tom said, one when he went to the state, he just said like, I don't need anything. He worked for $1. So the governor could take $1 and they could make an argument for an even higher salary, right? Because this isn't the maximum. This is the base in 2007.
It's the 50%
What is it?
of that
What's what?
base.
What does he give you pay?
This is,
I know what this says, but this is.
Amy did look it up. Yeah.
It's in the budget documents that you get.
it isn't the 20th, right?
Right.
Which page?
This is documents that we got from them or
In the governor's budget.
should be?
Obviously. So we'll have some more information
Okay,
about this and about the formulas that was folks concerned because these numbers are based on
Even this number doesn't.
this kind of formula.
The actual.
Is this the base salary for this position or is it the town salary?
You want to try to explain it, Amy?
I can try,
Okay.
and then we can try again next week. So it is the base salary, and then the top is 50% of the base. So you add 50% of that, and that's the top. So that's the range.
You take
The range,
50%.
but the top is not in statute, just the base. So
Base is for 2026, for next year, we're talking about. The base is 248, and the maximum could be 50% more than.
correct.
At the base doesn't mean that's what they get paid. That could take a loan.
Right, so that is their statutory offered amount. This is what they are statutorily allowed if they would like. And there's nothing that prevents them to take less than that.
And that's the same with other positions in here, like any of the commissioners and secretaries. What is here is the kind of calculated base amount, and they can have a max of 50% of that. But it may not relate to what they're actually getting paid.
People to ask.
Each person, because they might have been here for several years, they could be new, and that's going to change their status.
if they had been here for several years, I mean, if this was any other job, that it would be more.
Yeah.
Than that, right? So it would be more than the base, though. So the, I feel like I'm hearing two things, if I can say it back to make sure I'm understanding. There is a top, there is a upper limit, but that's not in statute.
It's a calculation,
Okay,
so it changes every year. And you've chosen to have the base in statute. You could choose
Okay.
to do the math and have it in statute every year.
And so-
50% of the bid.
so this the calculation is the statutory part.
You could take 248 for the governor, for example. Great. 50% of that add to 248, that would be the max.
Okay, I see. And then, but regardless of what that cap is, they can just opt for less.
But they have a total, pay dollar amount, they have to fit within.
So there's a hole or no?
Well, there's a total floor for the whole pay.
Oh,
The entire payment for a state employee,
okay.
exempt employee, so they might have some that they were telling us because of the corrections rate change. Since corrections got, a lot of officers got paid a lot more to try to issue with the vacancy savings in the corrections. They used a lot of the pay act money that year, so there was less money for raises for commissioners.
Okay,
Other examples. So they have flexibility,
okay,
so we could also ask the Commissioner of Finance and Management to come in and talk about that.
okay. That would be good. And then the base level that's here, is this increasing according to formula?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Okay. And that formula is also in statute,
So the formula is in Pay Act. So the first section outlines what the annual rate of adjustment is. So the annual rate of adjustment is applied to the previous year's base.
So at some point, the governor's pay was just a lot more. So if everybody is having the same accelerators, kind of maybe the wrong word, but percentage increase. At some point, the governor's pay was just much higher, and so it accelerated it. It just, yeah.
Because it's the percentage, and the percentage is based on what the negotiated raises for the union, so that the collective bargaining agreement gets put into the pay. But yeah, that was kind of one of my concerns. We're doing it by formula. The higher the salary is, the more exponential growth will be compared to a regular classified snowplow driver or something.
Okay. I'll just note again, this is of interest to me, and if it takes effect, I mean, I know this pay act, so it's not. Yeah. I guess it would be FY 27, so that's next year, but in the future. Again, not.
How we do, I'd like to know how we do compared to other states.
Yeah, we can ask them. We have some time
HR can do that.
next week to have.
Are we saying this is too much or not enough?
I am saying it's too much. My understanding is that we have one of the highest paid governors in the country. Which, especially for a small relative for states.
Go by the 27
Or
number.
would your suggestion be on that?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to look at what the range is in the country. And I'd like to. I'm open to arguments about,
Debate.
I'm open to debate about what it ought to be, yeah.
No argument.
So could candidates for governor submit bids and take the lead?
There you go.
I will say, like, I get the idea of somebody being able to, opt for something less than what it is, but I
don't like that.
I don't like that either.
No, it puts pressure,
I think
somebody
it's all-
has to say, no, I
If you're
don't want it.
rich, you can take those.
If you're not rich, you can't do it.
But I think it would be better to get some, and I think the thing that always bothers me about all of these is it's compensation package that's more than having sat on a university board and had them lower the salary so they could get retirement benefits and healthcare benefits that were jacked up so it looked like they would look better. People play with it. It's the whole compensation package that I think you have to look at.
Yeah, I remember as mayor during COVID, at one point, there was a movement among the counselors to be like, I will forego my paycheck. And we were told that we were not allowed to do that. And that if we wanted to do something like that, that we could end up donating money back, right? Like, no, you have to take it. What you do with it afterwards is up to you. But, and so if that is the sense of like, I don't really need this money, great, take it, donate it back. That's on you though.
I think that when they build their budget, they make those decisions. It's not like individuals. I think they're like, what, how much money do we have? I'm sure the governor, being the governor, can just make more of a decision than some other districts, but we'll have them in and just to learn more about it.
It would be nice to understand to me, it's the whole compensation package. Very frequently, hospitals, it's all over the map.
I do have a question, Amy.
Yes.
My question is quite basic. Is this in the realm legally of pay act? Is that what we can deal with? Is this, let's count this to be, I mean, this has been set in statutes, pay act, right?
The negotiation.
But negotiate.
Well, the negotiation was between the union and the state. The pay act is based on that. We're not affecting the collective bargaining agreement. That would be problematic. So this is just taking that what was the collective bargaining and sort of applying it to all the exempt, the non-union employees. That's what the pay act is, how I look. So that part is,
Well,
it is open to legislators.
it would be nice to know when the last time this was said, because if you agree to percentage increases and you have the higher salaries, they go up faster. So if,
5% of zero.
yeah, so we need more information.
Yes, but we will get more. Okay. That,
Thank you.
yeah. Part of the committee discussion is any proposals people have. I know that Pro Tem, Senator Baruch is Mr. Yes.
I'm gonna be bringing you some proposals next week.
Okay.
Working very hard this week to try and get everything.
You want me to pass this out?
Sure. I've got some language that's, and it will be in Dale, one around,
Yes.
adult days.
Okay, just let me see it before you want to pass that out.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so,
And, just to be clear, I, have been kind of talking about this with the also.
Is that supposed to help?
I'm just gonna say.
Whatever, just to be honest, it's whatever it is.
so everybody remembers probably that the governor had $15 million from the higher ed trust fund going to the stadium project at UVM in his budget. And one thing I note about that is that the original ask for the governor was 20 million. The governor's team were very interested in it, but they didn't feel they could fund the full 20 million. So theirs was based on taking 15 million from a $26 million windfall to the fund. And so I think in general, I agree with everyone who is protective of the fund. I have always been protective of the fund, but I was open to discussing it this time because, again, we have a $26 million chunk moving into it. And if we did the governor's plan, that would leave 11 million, which is still a very big infusion into the corpus of that fund. But it seemed to me that it was better to think about it in terms of the traditional beneficiaries of the higher ed trust fund. That is UVM State Colleges and DSAC. So, talking with, Senator Westman, other people, this proposal takes the governor's 15 million and allocates it somewhat differently. So you'll see that now 12 million moves to the multi-purpose center project, which I think of as an extremely robust economic development proposal. And then you'll see that the Vermont State Colleges, the McClellan Hall Housing Transformation Project, that's something that I've been working on with the chancellor for the last couple of years. We had talked to our institution's chair. She was interested in it, but ultimately it didn't appear in the House version of the bill. So it seemed in the capital bill, yeah. So it seemed like it was a good place to put it here with, if you turn the page.
This is at former Johnson State. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, no, it's
It's the Johnson campus.
where's the 2 point? Oh, right. So the 2.32 is in the House budget, but they take it out of the interest, the accrued interest, the 9 million. So what this does conceptually is it's the 15 million. It reduces the amount to UVM by 3 million, and that 3 million now pays for the 2.32 that was approved by the House for Freedom and Unity grants, and the 600 that would go for the McClellan Hall Housing Transformation Project. So I think the main knock on doing that, removing any money from the grant line, is that it winds up costing students who are the recipients of the grants from the Higher Ed Trust Fund. So what this does, if you look on page 2, is it takes 20% of the revenue from the cannabis excise tax and it feeds that into the Higher Ed Trust Fund. So what you have then is we now have 30% of the excise tax money goes for substance misuse and prevention. The after-school funding is from the sales tax. So right now, 70% of the excise tax drops to the bottom line of the general fund. This would remove 20% into the Higher Ed Trust Fund and continue to allow 50% to drop into the general fund. So I see that as a way to make the fund whole over a few years. And then as it continues, it would accrue in the balance of the fund and offer much more in the way of scholarships over time. So to sum up, I feel as though it allows the governor the money he wants for the economic development project at UVM. And then it allows the House what they want in terms of the 2.32 Freedom and Unity grants. It gets Vermont State University shovel-ready plans for the McClellan project. And it makes that movement from the excise tax to fund going forward. So that's the proposal.
So I want to be clear here. So you're talking about taking, tell me where the $15 million comes from.
Comes from the money that went in this past year, 26 million.
Okay.
15 comes out, 11 stays in.
And of that 15, we're putting 12
Toward the multipurpose center.
we're putting 2.3 into the Freedom and Unity
Yeah,
and 600,000 into
the McClellan.
the McClellan project. And what about the other? That's it,
I think there's some small amount that,
2.9. And then so we're left with,
It's 80,000.
yeah, so I'm not worried about that.
not. So, okay, was
It's
there,
technically 15 million.
did you do any thinking about, I understand the need for the economic development, and I know how long this multi-purpose center project has been discussed in our state. But any thought about, once we're doing this, taking it out of the endowment fund, looking at how to provide support for, Vermont State University, increase that commitment, and also CCV, so that there's more of an equal distribution across UVM, CCV,
Going forward, the cannabis revenue, the 20%, which is, I'm told, between
Yeah.
4 and 5 million a year
Yes.
for the 20%. Once that is moving into the higher ed trust fund, the 3 traditional beneficiaries would wind up getting more and more each year. So Vermont State University would benefit more going forward. But I hadn't thought about anything other than the houses, Freedom Community, 2.32 and the 600.
I'm just thinking about sort of the equitable treatment of all of our higher ed.
Well, if I could just have a note on that. So,
I know we've given a lot to VSU.
Yeah.
Understood. I
and
know.
I just
Done a
want to,
lot.
for folks around the table who want to hear, I just want to say that if you go back 10 years, the idea was that $1 for the state colleges was $1 for UVM. Across the board, there was no negotiation. There had to be equal amounts, otherwise we'd have all kinds of fighting. So that was the agreement when I came into this part of the budget. Then we hit, as you know, this existential moment for the state colleges. We scrambled, we put together a blue ribbon commission, came up with a plan of unification. They're doing pretty well coming out of that. But for the period of 5 years, we put literally hundreds of millions into the state colleges to stabilize them and allow them to make their transformation. I was the one that had to go to UVM every year and tell them the bad news, which is that they were going to get 50 million less or 40 million less than State University. And they, to their credit, they understood the need and they went along with that. So this is the first time in 6-7 years where UVM has received more than the State University. And I believe this is a one-time thing.
You say,
And you said that JFO or somebody said that 20% of the revenue would be 5 million a year.
That was yes.
Give or take a couple hundred thousand.
And it depends on. Yeah.
Correct.
and it's only for a limited time until it's a payback.
Well, as it's written here, it's going forward. That's, I imagine in conference with the House, lots of aspects will be done for discussion and probably.
So, freedom and unity. This will increase freedom and unity, up to 85,000. And, presently, across the state colleges, we pay for CCD up to. 100.
Yeah.
100,000. So, this would bring, the Vermont State University to 85,000.
So just one meeting, or that 2.3 does the freedom and unity grant. Is that like the 1 year that's expanded?
Well, it would be for this budget year.
So if we can do it the following year, they have to. Okay. Any other questions about this? Yes, Senator.
Christine, the new fellow here. Tell me about the fund that we're pulling it, proposing to pull it from. How did it get started? How does the funding go into that particular fund? And why does it increase every year other than the interest?
125% of the state tax revenue. Yeah, so if you go over the 125%, it goes into the higher education trust fund. And equally, the state college system, the university, and VSAC have up to this point separated the money. But for me, the thing that's most appealing is we produce a way that allows us to backfill over time, that $15 million that they get back to place, it's even for everybody else. And it does initially front load money to the University of Vermont. But, and there are lots of reasons to do it, but this does backfill the money, over the next, I would think, about 3 years. It would take 3 years to backfill the money as you do that.
So how much students take advantage of this fund from it?
I don't know the exact number.
So right now, JFO has a whole memo on the higher education trust fund about, right? I don't know if Chris did that.
And I also, Senator Norris, I just emailed you the higher ed trust fund's annual report. They go way back on the treasurer's website and they probably answer it. The report probably answers every question.
So they do 5%, like they have this trust fund, they issue 5% out every year and they split that amongst the three beneficiaries, BSAC, UVM, and state colleges.
Yeah, from what I'm saying.
And then state colleges gives 40% of what they get to Vermont Community College. So they kind of split theirs up.
Right, I was wondering why CCE wasn't part of those.
Yeah, and there's
They are.
people that feel, well, there are only through state colleges. The state college takes their third and then splits it kind of in half and gives 40% to Vermont Community College and keeps the rest for Vermont state colleges. So there are interest in splitting it forward. Some people would like to do that.
That's was my question. Why isn't it four-way split?
It just wasn't, I wasn't here when it was created. My understanding that was the deal when it was created. And I got an email today from Jeff Spalding, who was the chair of this committee when it was created, and they were looking to how can they sustainably fund these scholarships. They created, there's also some money from, if you remember from the treasury report. Yeah, there's a little bit of money from that unclaimed property. Those unclaimed properties under $100 that are 10 years old. They put that in, the treasury proposing to divert that away from the fund to the SAVES program for 4 or 5 years. So it's, and then there's also a provision if the fund has, they can never go below the corpus of the prior year, but they can also do up to 2% to the endowments at state colleges and UVM, but those UVM and state colleges have to match it, and they can only put it into their own endowments. And they did that last year because of this large gift that they got from basically one individual.
I mean, presently, the community college pay for families up to around $100,000 for everyone in their family to go tuition free to CCV. We presently at Vermont State University, I think it's 65,000, and the question would remain for me for a struggling family: is it fair that the only choice that you give someone that's about at a $75,000 or an $80,000 level, the only choice you give them is to go to community college? You don't allow them to go to the campus. Is that fair?
There's a lot to read here from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's I have a printout of their report.
Well, I know, and I'm not standing against it. I know that when we talk about equity, which we're always talking about in this state, now equity. It seems like CCV is a portion of this.
Well, CCV was under the umbrella of the state colleges, and it was only when we paid 3 of them Vermont State University, and they were delighted not to be included in the new Vermont State University. They wanted to remain separate. So they've always gotten the share we're talking about. It's only the fact that we created Vermont University that makes it look like they're out of it now. They're still taken care of under this existing statute as one of 4 recipients. So
They get 40% of 30%.
they're not in any worse position than they were in
40%,
ever.
So
Yeah, and they're part of the state.
most interested in students. And if I'm a student that's in a family just over 65,000, they should have a choice.
Okay. Well, that was a presentation.
You're talking about school, right?
Yes.
Well, the only choice is to go to CCB, and I think a landed campus, if a kid comes out of school and wants to go, yeah, they have a choice.
So we will discuss this more. We'll get maybe some more information. But that's fine. And we'll get more information that we asked to do for the languages that the sections of the bill that we kept open. I have received 3 letters from committees, but some of the committees might not do a letter. It's not required.
I'm in the process of doing a letter.
Doesn't have to be an official letter.
Well, they say in the menu.
Good.
That's.
Yeah. So my plan is to take those other lists that we have and try to create a spreadsheet that shows kind of everything on there, kind of where we would be if we funded everything. And just like how much of all, because a lot of, even though.
I will tell you that I am not asking for addition. I am looking to move and rob Peter to pay Paul.
You're gonna go.
And we decided that Paul needed more money.
Okay,
So I'm moving some things around that they're very difficult choices.
okay.
I haven't added money, but if you would like me to add money, I can do that very easily,
Yes, that's
Right off.
very easily.
so, because so some of the, even though I kind of asked the committees to
I'm sure.
rank their priorities, a lot of they some that did, but some of us like here are all of our priorities, which is not as helpful. Or they prioritize their bills, but then they say here are the other things we like that are House bills. They did prioritize them. So that'll be the job that we get to do. We'll kind of see everything. Because there's a lot of things that we want to do. Obviously, we just don't have money, so we'll have to figure out what to cut here. So any other things you want to make sure that are on the list, let me know. Yes, we'll hopefully see that.
Don't ask that.
Yeah.
What you wish for.
Well, it'll just mean more that we have to cut.
Yes.
So that's the plan. Are there any questions about that? I'll be working with JFO on this. We're gonna work some of it up today to the transportation chair called the committee meeting for Monday afternoon.
Morning committee got out of the afternoon committee. But the next,
Yeah, well, the transportation fund needs a lot of work, so 5 days a week.
Transportation committee.
So that's all I really had, unless there's any questions or other comments, concerns.
L, can you
Praises.